Hey there, you want to start playing chess in 2023. I have separated the video in chapters so you can come back and rewatch parts you did not fully understand. This is the starting position of the pawn. It can move 2 fields from there. After that it can only move 1 field. In order to take a piece it has to move diagonally. It is possible both ways, but a pawn can only move 1 field to take a figure. If you walk the pawn all the way to the other end of the field you can promote it. The pawn is the only figure you can never move back. This is the starting position of the knight. From here it can attack 3 squares. The knight moves in an L pattern. It goes 2 squares straight and then either 1 to the left or 1 to the right. Therefore it covers the following fields. A knight on the side of a board is generally speaking weaker than a knight in the middle, as it can access less squares. The knight is the only chess piece that is allowed to jump over other pieces. This is the starting position of the white bishop. It is named after the square it is standing on. The bishop moves diagonally in every direction. Every side has a white and a black bishop. This is the starting position of the rook. It can move as many scores as it wants in a straight line. The rook is able to do so in all 4 directions. Every side has 2 rooks. Combining them is a good way to make sure each one of them is safe. This is the starting position of the queen. From here she can move both diagonally and straight. Therefore you can imagine her as a rook combined with a bishop. As you can see here, the queen is able to occupy a lot of fields at once and is therefore the most powerful figure. This is the starting position of the king. It is like a light version of the king, because it can move in every direction, but only for 1 square. In chess the king is the most important figure. The goal is to mate the opponent's king and protect the own king. Has a worth of $1. The pawn has a worth of $1. It moves in this pattern. The bishop is worth $3. The bishop is worth $3. It moves this way. The knight is also worth $3. The rook is worth $5. The queen costs $9. Now we enter the more advanced part of the video. If we have a lot of long lines, the bishop is more valuable than the knight. However, if there is no such space, the knight is more powerful. Pawns in the middle are worth more. 3 minor pieces are worth more than a queen. Save your king by castling. You can either castle kingside or queenside. There are some rules to castling. There cannot be pieces in between. Your king cannot be in check after castling. Your king cannot pass a field that is under enemy control. You cannot castle if you are in check. And this is how. This move is called
En passant.
Whenever your pawn has advanced enough, you can take the enemy pawn when it moves 2 fields. In the opening, it is key to occupy the center. This is why e4 is the most common move. It puts a pawn in the center and attacks a center field. e5 is the common response for similar reasons. Make sure to develop your light pieces. Knight to e2 is rather bad because it blocks the bishop, and f3 attacks more fields. Normally you want to develop knights before bishops. With this move, white not only attacks the center, but threatens to take the enemy's pawn. Black has to react to this. This is another very common threat. You should protect your king early in the opening. Castling is the easiest way. It is important to not move your figures twice. Black should include his other figures and save his king. Imagine your figures as an army. It would be a mistake to only use half of it, wouldn't it? If you develop your queen too early, she is going to be a big target for the enemy, as she must probably move again. This brings white a time advantage, and more of his figures are in the game. Do you have trouble finding the right opening for you? Let me introduce you to the Italian game. Stay till the end of the video to find out how to win fast with this opening. Both sides put a pawn in the middle to attack the center of the field. White's knight attacks black's pawn, which is why he defends it with the knight. This opening allows both sides to develop their pieces and secure their kings. However, if you want to, you can also castle earlier. If you want to prohibit your opponent from pinning your knight, this is a great possibility to do so. Now let's move on to some ideas with which you can win the game early. If white castles early, you can decide to stay in the middle and start a deadly attack. You put pressure on the already pinned knight to make sure the pawn has to take. Kick out the enemy's knight. As you have not castled, this open line is accessible by your rook. The opponent, however, has his king open to the attack now. This way you win the queen and the game is as good as over. White may try to block with the bishop, but you just have to remove it with the pawn. Here is a possibility for white to start an attack. After the basic opening, you prepare a strike in the center. Now you take over all the space in the middle and push their knights back. After that, you want to put a lot of pressure on the king's side to rip open the pawn structure. Due to the pinned pawn, you can take the knight with the queen. Almost all your figures are involved in the attack and black has no chance to win anymore. If white plays this against you, you need to find precise moves in order to make sure you do not end up losing. You have to play very aggressive as well. This counterattack in the middle is key. Do not play the bishop but the pawn. I like this opening because even if black finds the right moves, it is still an even game. This is a common beginner trap you should be aware. This way white wins the rook. If black defends the pawn, you can threaten mate in one. Make sure to defend your pawn. Defend the mate threat. White threatens to mate again. As in the opening, it is key to react to threats. In this case, white threatens to take the knight. By moving the king, we protect it. If the possibility is given, you should start an initiative against the opponent's king. We want to create open lines by trading pawns because black did not castle. Just a couple of moves later, black is in a clear disadvantage and has problems defending his king. Another very important aspect of chess you should pay attention to in the mid-game is the pawn structure. In general, you do not want your pawns separated from each other but in a line. By taking the bishop, white makes sure the black pawn structure is bad. He even creates a double pawn. In this case, white has two separated pawns. How can he better his structure? He forces black to trade queens to have a nice pawn structure. This is called a behind pawn because it cannot get into the chain within one move. The best thing is to trade them. The last rule is to find better places for your pieces. This allows them to have a maximum impact in the game. With this move, you do not only enable the bishop to guard a lot of fields, but the knight is in a more aggressive position as well. You can also play moves to prohibit your opponent from bettering the position of his own figures, plus this move creates a weak pawn structure. Did you see this move? The first important point is to activate your king. In the endgame, he is a very powerful figure. In this example, white goes all the way to the other side of the board. Another very important rule is to use forced moves. Here white has no other choice but to sacrifice a pawn, because if the knight moves, black's pawn will be promoted, and if the king moves, the knight will fall. If the knight takes the bishop, the pawn will be promoted. White has to move again and loses whatever he does. If you are the defender, meaning that you have less pawns than your opponent, then you should trade pawns. If you have two queens or two rooks left, it is very easy to mate your opponent. Make sure the queens are lined up with each other so you cannot blunder one. The queens make sure the opponent has no possibility to flee as they cut off all the fields. Be aware that rooks cannot protect each other. That's why we just put them on the other side of the board so the opponent has no way of taking them. It is harder, but also with only a rook you can checkmate your opponent. By making the board smaller, with your rook you can force the enemy's king to the end of the board. Here he already only has 6 fields left. If your opponent finds himself in the middle of the board, moving your king is useless. You have to make a rook move to force him to move his king. This way you get him all the way to the other end, where you can mate him. This is the starting position you should remember. From there you can mate your opponent easily. As you have a white bishop, you have to force the opponent in a white corner to mate him. Your opponent here has 2 fields to move to. You have to make sure he moves left so you take the right one away. Your knight will move in a W pattern. There are 2 options for black: either run away or stay close to the black corner. Make sure to always defend your pieces. If black wants to run away, you can prohibit that with your bishop. As with the rook, we force black to move and then continue with the W. Now it is important to make another waiting move, otherwise the game would end in a draw. We already took a look at black trying to stay in the corner, but what if he tried to escape on the left side? You can cut him off with the knight and the bishop. Now make sure he cannot escape the other way again. And we are back to a familiar position. The fork is a very strong tactic in chess. It basically is a double attack. It is especially effective if you combine it with check. Figures can be forked by the knight, the queen, the bishop, the pawn, the rook, or even the king. Now you will have to find forks by yourself. The queen moves to f4 to check the king and attack the bishop. The rook allows the bishop to take f7 and therefore attack the king and the bishop. The knight takes f7 and attacks the queen and the rook. This is a pin. You basically attack the opponent's figure through another figure. In this case, if they move the knight, the queen falls. It is also possible to pin a figure using a rook or a queen. Whenever a figure is pinned, you can or should not move it. Use this to your advantage and take pieces the figure would defend. Now there are 3 examples. Find the pins. In chess, if you attack a piece through another piece, it is called a skewer. The opponent has to move the more valuable piece, and you can take the less valuable piece in many cases. As long as the piece up front is more worth, you can do it with any piece. It is possible to do with the rook, the queen, or the bishop. Now there will be 3 examples. Threaten the king to get the queen. Attack the queen with the rook and she has to move. By threatening the rook, it has to move and you can take the pawn behind it. In this video, I want to show you how to save your bishop in a scenario you are very likely to face at some point. You can see that the opponent pushes your bishop away and threatens to attack it. If you miss this, your bishop has nowhere to go and will therefore fall. So in order to protect it, I recommend the following move. By moving your a-pawn, you provide space for the bishop to go to. However, if your opponent takes your pawn, you can take it back with the rook and have a very active rook. You can use this technique in various positions. The first rule is to not trade pieces, or more specifically, not trade pieces just for the sake of it. If you do not gain anything from trading pieces, do not trade them. In this example, white's bishop pins the knight and is therefore more valuable. In the middle of the board, the knight covers 8 fields. Many players make the mistake to put the knight on the side where it covers way less fields. Of course, there are exceptions to this rule, but be aware of it. The opening is one of the most important things in chess, as it dictates the rest of the game. That's why you should focus on 2 opening, 1 for you playing white, and 1 for you playing black. You must know the first moves no matter what your opponent does. For me, that's the Scandinavian defense. A good one for beginners is the Italian game. Check out my video on it. This leads us to the next point. Time management. If you know your opening well, you can play the first moves of your game very fast. Chess is not only about finding the right move, but also about finding it quickly. Especially if you play bullet or fast chess. The last rule is do not tilt. In chess, it is very easy to make one mistake which destroys your whole game. This can be frustrating, but you will get better with time. Also, when you recognize you being angry, stop playing and come back to the game later. Hey guys, thank you all for the amazing year 2022. I hope to grow our community in 2023. If you liked this video, consider checking out this playlist or subscribing to the channel. It would mean the world to me.